Hi guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat number 98, featuring the first part of my interview with shareware guru and Apogee founder, Mr. Scott Miller. Now in this part of the interview, we talk about his current projects, including his work with the Radar Group, a lot about movies and how they relate to games and vice versa, really good stuff. We also talk about his early days in the industry and his first computer, the Weighing 2200, and a lot about shareware versus abandonware and piracy. So a lot to cover. So without further ado, here is Mr. Scott Miller. Hi folks, I'm here with the great Scott Miller, the founder of Apogee, the co-founder of 3D Realms, a guy who's been with the industry since very early days. He's got lots of incredible stories to tell about pretty much all eras of the gaming industry and the history. Welcome to Matt Chat, Scott. Glad to have you here. Thought we could start off by talking about some of the new stuff you're working on, specifically the Radar Group. Can you tell me a little bit about what the Radar Group is?
Yeah, the Radar Group is a company that started in 2007 with the idea of sort of working with independent developers on new IP, and the idea is to focus on what we call transmedia IP, which is IP that's specifically sort of suitable for not only making games but also films. So we've got several projects underway, and some of them, well, the ones that are underway are unannounced, and hopefully later this year we can talk about those. We're also doing some social games. That seems to be the hot market now, so we've got some unannounced social games underway. So unfortunately we got some things going, but we can't really talk about them yet. So that's kind of where that stands.
And when you talk about cross-media, is that the same thing as transmedia?
Cross-media, transmedia, right. Basically anything that works not only in the game industry, but films, comics, novels. There can be, a music aspect to it. There's merchandising, that sort of thing.
You're talking about something more than just making a game based on a movie or vice versa, right? There's some sort of deeper relationship among the different media.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at, like Star Wars is one of my favorite examples of transmedia because it works so well as a movie, of course. But then again, it works well as a series of games, as novels and toys and so on. And the reason is that Star Wars sets up what I call a storyverse that's so vast and compelling and full of characters and locations and sort of unique mythology. Mythologies are like really important to a storyverse. And it has, it has like the Force. It has elements in it that not only make for great movies, but also great games, like the lightsaber and the Force. Those are really unique elements to the Star Wars universe that look great on the screen, but also make video games very unique and exciting. So, most movies don't have unique elements like the Force or lightsabers. Like if you look at Star Trek, on the surface, that seems like something very similar to Star Wars, but I've always contended that Star Trek is much less of a transmedia property than Star Wars because while it makes for a great TV and film series, not always a film series, but sometimes, it doesn't really have unique elements that translate into, that allow it to really sort of capture the gamer's interest because, really what is unique about Star Trek on the game side, from a gameplay perspective, you're flying ships around. That's been done before in many other games. It's not really unique. You've got phasers, which are basically lasers. You've got, you're exploring planets. Basically, you have so many other games that have done this. It's just really not unique to Star Trek. So Star Trek doesn't really bring anything unique to the table when it crosses from the linear side, like TV and movies and novels, which is so successful at, to the interactive side. There's just nothing unique about Star Trek that makes it that compelling, whereas Star Wars is just the opposite. You've got all the great characters, just like Star Trek has, but you've got the Force and lightsabers and stuff like that, which makes Star Wars such a unique and compelling entertainment on the interactive side.
I would say fascinating, but I don't know if that's appropriate.
Why not?
So why don't you? I noticed there's a big emphasis on original story verses. So you seem to be shying away from this very common tendency in the industry to license all the content. So why the emphasis on originality?
Well, if you make something original from the ground up, you can make sure it has all the elements it needs to be a true transmedia property. The fact is, I don't think that there's really more than a dozen or so properties that currently exist that are truly transmedia in nature. Like, I've tried to count these up, numerous times. You've got Star Wars is an obvious one. I think Lord of the Rings is an obvious one. Spider-Man, among the comic books characters, is really unique because on the game side, he's got his web, his wall crawling and his web spinning and stuff, and his swinging around on buildings. This is kind of really unique. You don't really find other characters that have those abilities. So Spider-Man has those unique characters that makes it a very interesting interactive property. Batman too, because he's got all the gadgets and stuff. But a property like, for instance, Indiana Jones has always had a lot of trouble on the interactive side because there's not really that much unique about that character that makes for a compelling interactive experience. Most movies that come out are just not suitable really to cross the chasm into the interactive market. They just lack those hooks that make for interesting and unique interactive gameplay. So it's just, I kind of feel like 1 in 10,000 movies may have what it takes to be an interactive property. It's that rare. And the same with TV shows. There's very few TV shows that can make for an interactive property, compelling one. And that's why you hardly see any of them have any success.
Now, is it easier to make a movie based on a game? Is it easier from that perspective? I'm thinking of, of course, there's the Max Payne movie and the Duke Nukem movie. So is this a better way to go?
Maybe, but really the same issues exist. It may be a little easier because successful games already have built-in interactive elements that kind of make them interesting. Like, Max Payne had bullet time, but really bullet time is sort of a copy of what John Woo's been doing and what The Matrix did. So, when it kind of bounces back to the movie side, it's like, well, been there, done that. So, Max Payne sort of had a tough go. The Max Payne movie also had issues because we had a great script, and then when the director got a hold of it, he screwed everything up. So it was really a shame. The script that was written was far better than the movie that we saw on screen. I'm very, very disappointed with the movie. So, but once the script was handed over to Fox, it was sort of like out of our control, and they were able to ruin it, and they did.
Is that what you had in mind when you said that, quote, creators should share ownership, unquote?
Right, but Hollywood thinks they have all the answers, and so once you deal with them, you find out that you're dealing with a whole different beast, and they say, look, we're putting $40 million into a movie, we get to do what we want with it, and they don't bend, and unless you're like an amazingly well-known, successful author like J.K. Rowling or someone like that. You're just not going to have any creative control once you hand your script over.
It probably explains why there's been so many bad movies based on games.
Right. Like the Doom movie. Yeah, most video games that become movies are horrible. No doubt about it.
Well, let's go back to your roots then. I was reading that you got a very early start with the PC. Way back in 1975, you had a computer called the Weighing 2200. I was talking to my friend Bill LeJudas from Armchair Arcade, and he was saying that by the time you adjust for inflation, that computer would have cost $32,000 today. What was it like having access to this computer at such a pivotal time in the history of the industry?
Yeah, this was 1975. I was very young at the time, and It was a computer that our school got a hold of, and they really didn't know what to do with it. They started teaching a computer class. I took a computer class. I took that computer class, and it was the one class in high school I failed because I don't think that the teacher knew anything about the computer, and his teaching was just entirely inadequate. And anyway, so it was a big sham. But after that semester, some friends of mine were actually talking about, hey, we're playing games on this computer. I was like, you can play games on the computer, really? And so that's kind of what got me interested. I started going over there and checking it out and seeing what they were doing. They were like typing in these games from computer magazines, and like Byte and Creative Computing, which were the two big ones at the time. And so I started typing in games also. When you type in these programs, you start to learn what the language is, and you start becoming, kind of decent at it, and you start modifying things. And I kind of got really good at making games. And I was actually sneaking into the school at night and spending several hours there, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, programming games. And finally I got caught, and they saw what I was doing, though. They said, we could suspend you from school for doing this, but instead we're going to give you the key, and you can come in on weekends and at night if you want. Just obviously don't steal anything. And in return, they said, I need to be the tutor to the teacher who's teaching the computer courses. Because they found that I knew at that point, I'd kind of self-taught myself, and I knew more than the teacher did on most of the programming language and everything. So it was a good trade-off, and for a long time I did that. But yeah, that computer was probably the first computer that was very much like the IBM PC that came later. It had a built-in screen, it had a built-in floppy drive, and it was just all very well integrated. And I think it had like 8 kilobytes of memory, which back then seemed enormous. So it was basically like a PC in a box, very much like PCs nowadays, but obviously using the technology at the time, which now is considered ancient, but it was a really nice system.
Now, your game Cross, I was looking at this earlier. This looks like a really, really interesting game. I was wondering, the description I saw compared it to Rogue. I haven't actually played Cross yet, but this description said it's based on Rogue, and I was wondering about that. But apparently has less randomness to it. So just wondering, about Cross. Can you talk a little bit about this game and Rogue?
Yeah, Rogue was a popular game. I think it was released by a company called Epyx at the time. Epyx spelled EPYX. They were the same company that did Jumpman and a bunch of other games that people might remember back then. And it was sort of, a dungeon explorer game, but I felt like it was very random, very unfair in that respect. So I wanted to sort of develop another version of the game that relied on skill. That if you were going to play, you could actually always complete the game and work your way down to the dungeon level. So basically, Cross was just a better version of Rogue, in my opinion. Had a lot more features to it, and it developed a huge following. But the thing about Cross was I made this long game that had I think it had 30 levels, and I had released a couple games into shareware before Cross. I had released a game called Beyond the Titanic and a game called Supernova, which were Infocom-like text adventure games. And those games didn't make me hardly any money at all, but I knew they were very popular after, because on the message boards and so on FidoNet and everything, people were really talking about these things. So I was thinking, if I release Cross, I'm not going to make any money. And so maybe I'll try something different. So what I did is I broke the game up into 3 episodes, and I released the first 10 levels as a game called Kingdom of Cross freely onto the internet through shareware. And really the internet back in those days meant BBS systems. So I released that, and that game advertised the other 2 episodes, each with 10 more levels, that you had to send me a check for, I think, $20 to get those. And that was the big secret to my success, I think, because people are not willing to pay for something they've already got in their hand, but they're willing to pay for something if it gets them something new. And so by sending me a check for $20, they get 20 more levels of this game. And that first year I made like $100,000, and I was working at a company where I was making $30,000 a year, and I was like, well, gee, should I keep working at this company for $30,000 a year, or really kind of pursue this shareware thing and keep making more cross games and really kind of develop this into a business? And so in 1990, that's what I did. I left my job and made some more cross games. I was continuing to make over $100,000 a year, and it was just me by myself. And I realized, if I start to recruit other authors and kind of sell them on this episodic shareware marketing technique, then, the money should just keep growing. And so I recruited an author named Todd Repogel, who was co-creator of Duke Nukem eventually. I talked to John Romero and John Carmack, who I knew at Softdisk at the time, and talked them into doing a game called Commander Keen, and started talking to other authors, and that's really how Apogee grew. And, it just kind of just skyrocketed from there.
And I'm sort of curious, you had said that you had developed a couple of games before this, the text adventures. And I guess those were based on the traditional shareware model of, if you like this game, send a check, right? So
exactly.
Nobody's sending a check. So I'm sort of wondering, why didn't, how does this tie into piracy? And, why didn't people just, somebody get the full game and just, pirate it? Why do you think you got so many honest people sending money?
Well, I'm sure that a large percentage of people were not honest. And, like, for instance, I'm sure that, once people started to buy the other 2 episodes of Cross, they started to appear online. Dishonest people were uploading these things online. But it's amazing how many BBS operators would then remove it. They would actually see my screen saying this should not be distributed shareware. So luckily, there was a lot of honest people in the BBS community and the internet community who, when they saw these illegal versions of the game, they would remove them. And somehow I was still making so much money that the fact that a lot of piracy was going on, it's like, yeah, I could be making more money, but I'm making plenty, and so I wasn't going to complain.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of criticism about modern DRM systems out there. I'm sure you've seen that on Amazon and all that. Just wondering, what do you think about this problem of piracy as it exists today? And do you like what do you think about DRM?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment much about DRM. I don't really follow that whole thing much, but I've been pretty outspoken about piracy. And I guess a lot of people say that pirates probably wouldn't buy the game anyway, but I think that a percentage of them would. Piracy, it's a huge problem. The industry loses a ton of money. I don't know really what can be done about it. And yeah, I used to really rage about this issue, but now I just kind of accept it for what it is. And, the good games are still making really good money out there. And now you have new platforms like the iPhone and so on, where you have games like, Angry Birds doing extremely well and Words for Friends do extremely well. So if you do a good game, you're still going to make a ton of money. And as much as I hate piracy, because basically it's just theft, I don't really see a solution to it. I don't know how it can be improved that much. But anyway, I'm not really sure what to say about it. It's a problem, but no one's got really a good solution.
What do you think about abandonware?
We released a lot of abandonware. I like the idea. I like the idea that games aren't lost forever. They're released out there, and other coders or other people who are fans can try and update them and kind of keep them alive and so on. So I really like the idea.
And that's all for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Should be back next week with the second part of this interview with Scott Miller. We haven't even gotten to the Duke Nukem and Duke Nukem Forever stuff, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. It's going to be really good. I didn't get any toast this week. I've had some generous contributions, but no recommendations. So I decided to try out this Weyerbacher, or perhaps it's Weyerbacher or something like this. This is a Mary Monk's Belgian-style golden ale. And I had some last night, and they are exquisite. This is brewed in Easton, Pennsylvania. I highly recommend it to all of you beer fans out there. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now, for the quotation this week, I have one of my favorite modern authors, a law professor named Lawrence Lessig, and he's got a wonderful book called Free Culture that I highly recommend. Free Culture. You can actually read it for free online, but if you're like me, you'd probably rather get a printed copy. But anyway, here is the quotation. Free cultures are cultures that leave a great deal open for others to build upon. Unfree or permission cultures leave much less. Ours was a free culture. It is becoming much less so. Some somewhat scary thoughts, I guess, from Larry Lessig. Hope you enjoyed that, and see you next week.
Choose your game. But if you lose, you will stay here in hell.